As far as Germany, when Sebastian won against the Engelhard Brewery, and they didn't appeal, and Larov was created by statute by the government, which is the building where they verify whether or not a parcel of land deserves restitution or compensation. There was another governmental agency, it's called the Treuhand, and their duty was to allocate the mode of compensation, whether it's going to be, if it's a hospital or a park, the compensation would have been different by, let's say, a building that is owned by a good faith purchaser who already paid some kind of consideration, just like what we learn in law school, and it will be unfair to take the building away from him. So the Treuhand, in negotiation with Sebastian and with Ronnie and with me, we were to agree on a formula. We didn't have much choice. Basically, they were dictating to us what they're going to do. So there were three ways they could compensate us. If a building was actually operated and owned by a good faith purchaser who actually paid money for it, it doesn't matter when. The chain of title went from the 30s all the way to date, then it's fine. Then they would pay us 3 times the value of 1939, which is very low. That means if the building was $10,000 in 1939, we received $30,000. That's it. Luckily, the buildings were quite big, and I think the smallest value of a building was like $50,000 or $60,000. That was one compensation. The other compensation, which we liked, and we prayed that it would be many, many of them, was where it was just a park or a hospital. The government took it. Then we took market value of what the property is in 2000. But remember, it's East Germany we're talking about, not West Germany. East Germany was bleak, literally, like the spy books or movies that you saw of John le Carre. Very sad, very lonely, very bleak. So even the market value, better than the other value, but it still was okay. And the third one was a building that is abandoned. We had the right, we meaning the state of Nachar, we had the right to take it, manage it, develop it, sell it, do whatever we want. So those were the 3 different modes of value we attached, and we still have them. We still have more properties. Most of it have been sold and we've been compensated, but we still have about 50 or 60 different lots that are being either developed or sold, and we also have to share it with 2 Jewish organizations in Poland. I think they get 10% of the state.
Yeah.
And you know, when I went to law school, took international law, there was a real ambiguous status of naturalization, nationalization of private property, and whether or not it was legal or not under federal law or New York law. Did the bank ever have the nerve to argue that, in fact, this was a nationalized property?
No. What the bank did was very clever. They never addressed all the arguments which we would have won. What they did was they went behind our back to the Treasury Department without telling us and said, look, you have to settle this for us. Ultimately, we lost, I don't think we lost the case, but we technically lost the case on what's called the political question doctrine. That is, this was a political question which was for the United States government to deal with under the Supremacy Clause, and the New York state courts, or even the federal courts, should step aside. And they don't have to. That's very interesting about the political question doctrine. They don't have to do it. On the last page of the outline, I put the Dresdner Bank's arguments, which the Justice Department and the Dresdner Bank, these are the same arguments, which is pretty annoying when you think about it, but there it is. Their argument was, look, the major project of the United States government in its whole entire history was World War II. And it's not for the court system. That's a military and a political question. And even after 1945, well, it was such a great conflagration, World War II, that when you think about it, it's probably still not over, but it certainly wasn't over until 1989 when Germany was reunified, because after World War II was over, the United States and the Soviets have the Cold War, which grows out of World War II, and that wasn't over, and that, of course, was the precipitating event as to why we could get around the statute of limitations to begin with. But the United States said, hey, look, this is our baby. It's not for the court system. It's for the executive branch. So this all got down to, in my mind, this is CLE, so we should talk about this. Federalist number 82. Now, what is Federalist number 82? Well, that turns out to be, to me, the key to this. When they were setting up the government, Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, did not take over any New York State court cases, didn't take over any state court cases. That wasn't the idea. This was the idea of how this was supposed to work. This is Federalist number 82. This is Hamilton talking. I am even of the opinion that in every case in which they are not expressly excluded by future acts of the national legislature, they will of course take cognizance of the cause to which these acts may give birth. Thus I infer from the nature of judiciary power and from the general genius of the system. That's the system he cooked up, the general. Yeah. The judiciary power of every government looks beyond its own local or municipal laws and in civil cases lays hold of all subjects of litigation between parties within its jurisdiction, though the causes of the dispute are relative to the laws of the most distant part of the globe. Those of Japan, not less than of New York, may furnish the objects of legal discussion in our courts. So, Hamilton was on my side. That's what I told every judge who would listen. Didn't go with it. But that's why I still think that you can bring this case in the state court. Because he later says, listen to this, when in addition to this we consider the state governments and the national governments as they truly are in light of the kindred systems as parts of one whole. And Hamilton capitalizes one whole, O-N-E-W-H-O-L-E, big letters. You know, overlapping jurisdiction. That was, if you remember constitutional law, American history from high school, when they were setting this up, they had a big fight about this. Well, we're going to have the state courts have the power, the federal courts have the power. We're going to have federal courts at all. What should we do about this? And they decide on this sort of convoluted system where there's overlapping jurisdiction. That's why I think we were right. But the political question doctrine, when you think about it, now that the case is already 3 years distant in my mind, you know, the political question doctrine, there's some merit to it.
I want to answer.
Yeah.
I want to address the question that you had before online. If going back to general practice became more difficult. Mark and Paul and myself and Sebastian, we didn't give up. We're giving lectures. We were recently at Syracuse University. Syracuse University is one of the leading universities on Holocaust studies. We're writing articles about it. A documentary movie is at the works. They already started to filming in Berlin. And all of us are committed to the case, even though we reached the end of the line with the rejection by the US Supreme Court. But we're going to continue because the more the public knows about it, the more we feel we're doing our duty towards our clients and any existing person who suffered as a result of the Holocaust, Jew or otherwise. As you know, millions of non-Jews also suffered in the Holocaust. That's one thing. The other thing, we found out that money is not the only reason to take a case. And we wonderfully were, to each other's surprise, this case could not have functioned without any one of us, literally. And any one of us had totally independent duty, and it was a magnificent demonstration of a teamwork where Sebastian in Germany, Paul by drafting very sophisticated legal documents, Mark in convincing Nacher to actually go along with us. Mr. Nacher buried 3 lawyers who tried to reach something, and it's nothing against the lawyers. East Germany was under the Soviet Union. No lawyer could do anything under the Soviet Union. We were lucky. Reagan and Gorbachev struck the deal. The wall went down. Germany is unified. This little firm takes the case. We don't give up. We don't get a penny for years and years and years. Most of us were giving up. But what I learned is that you take a case because you really are involved with the case. The reward somehow will come. That's a good philosophy to keep in mind. It's very satisfying if you really can live up to it. Don't just rush half an hour to do a transaction. Sometimes there is a tremendous reward on holding the hand of the client and being patient. And you'll see that that client might refer to you numerous people. That has been my experience anyway.
And we have another question from our online viewers. They want to know what you thought was the lowest point of handling this case.
Okay. The lowest point was Mr. Nacher's deposition. He didn't do well. He was the main witness, and I left there very, very upset. That was the lowest point. But I can tell you a high point that I didn't tell you before. You know, most lawyers are very involved with fees. That's the main thing that they do. And we finally did get paid in this case. And when we got the check from the Treasury Department, or from the Dresdner Bank, I don't know where it was. It showed up in my...
It was on your bank account.
Yeah, it showed up electronically in
on
my
your
bank.
ATM.
Yeah, I go to the ATM to see, can I pay myself this week? Do I have $200? So I look at my ATM, there's $350,000 in there. I say, what? You know, they had wired it in there after we told Katzenbach that we didn't care. So we divide this up. So my share of this was like $56,000, which for us was a big fee. But I look at this money and I say, you know, I can't spend this money. I can't spend this money. This is blood. You know what happened with this money? 60 million people died with this money. I'm not gonna get this. This is not my money. I mean, it is my money, but it's not my money. So I go to, I live in Westchester. I go to Central Avenue. There's an office of Israel bonds, and I'm going to buy $54,000 worth of Israel bonds.
No, but first we couldn't touch it. We had to clarify.
Yeah, anyway, after it's finally done, I pay the tax. So now I have $27,000. So I have $27,000. I buy $27,000 worth of Israel bonds, and nobody buys that. People buy $500. So the lady says to me, why do you want to buy $27,000 worth of Israel bonds? I said, let me explain to you where I got this money. So I tell this story. So she listens, she looks at me, she starts to cry, and she hugs me for a long time, like I never met her before. She said, I never met her before. That's what happened. That was worth it. That was worth it.